Ja sam Miodrag Ćertić, autor serije o Balkanu. Pozivam vas da nam se pridružite dok mi istražujemo ovo naše poluostrvo. Region koji se proteže na 1600 km od Trsta do Istanbula. Tokom 13 epizoda bavit ćemo se time šta je to što definiše Balkan. Koji su to kulturni, fizički i geografski aspekti koji ga čine jedinstvenim. I istine i mitovi, stereotipi, predrasude, stvari koje formiraju mišljenja o nama širom sveta. Dok sedim ovde u stanu, moj ulični prozor gleda prema beogradskoj Bajrakli džamiji, a dvorišni prema galeriji fresaka koja je podignuta posle Drugog svetskog rata na ruševinama Sefardske sinagoge. Odmah tu levo, takođe vidljiv sa mog prozora, je Savez jevrejskih opština. Ja sam hrišćanin pravoslavac, a odrastao sam u komunističkoj Jugoslaviji. Ovakva vrsta raznolikosti, vera i verovanja je ono u što su mnogi od nas odrasli i uzimali zdravo za gotovo. Sve dok nas nisu neprijatno iznenadili događaji 90. godina prošlog veka. Dakle, u prvih nekoliko epizoda ove serije želeli bi da uperimo naše kamere na balkanski fenomen mirne, multietničke kohabitacije koja periodično eksplodira. Ubilačku mržnju, sukobe ili, ako dozvolite, jedan buket opojnih mirisa koji se iznenada pretvori u eksplozivnu smešu. Počet ćemo u Solunu, osnovanom pre nekih 2300 godina i sve do 20. veka gradu poznatom po uspešnom mešanju religija, nacionalnosti i kultura. Stigli smo dan pre našeg zakazanog razgovora sa gradonačelnikom Soluna, sa namerom da se malo prošetamo gradom i steknemo jedan opšti utisak o njemu pre našeg sastanka. Dočekao nas je pljusak. Planirali smo između ostalog i da pogledamo šta su i koji su, ako još postoje, ostaci metropole, koja je nekad bila poznata kao Zapadni Jerusalim, jer je to vekovima bio jedini značajan evropski grad čije su većinsko stanovništvo činili Jevreji. Danas je Solun skoro u potpunosti grad Grka, sa jevrejskom zajednicom koja čini manje od 1% stanovništva. Kiša je ubrzo prestala i prvi dokaz o jevrejskoj prošlosti ovog grada na koji smo naišli nije bila ni sinagoga, niti jevrejski kvart, već memorijal žrtvama Holokausta, rad čuvenog jugoslovenskog vajara Nandora Glida, u spomen više od 50.000 Solunjana koji su nastradali u Auschwitzu. Nastavili smo šetnju Solunskom obalom i uskoro naišli na spomenik Aristotelu, učitelju Aleksandra Makedonskog. I kao da kiše nikad nije ni bilo, obala je počela da se puni mladima. Prvi zaključak je da je Solun grad spomenika i grad mladih. Velika većina kulturnih spomenika je iz vizantijskog vremena. Pravoslavne crkve su uvek otvorene i za turiste i za vernike, a ubrzo saznajemo da je jedna od najlepših solunskih crkava, Sveti Nikola Orfanos, zadužbina našeg kralja Milutina. Valjda zbog toga da se freske što bolje očuvaju, ona je skoro uvek zatvorena, ali kada uspemo da dobijemo ključ, bivamo bogato nagrađeni. Da je pravoslavlje živa stvar u Solunu danas, niko ne sumnja. Naoružani našim prvim impresijama, odlazimo na sastanak sa solunskim gradonačelnikom. Janis Butaris je vrlo uspešan vlasnik poznate vinarije, koji se u politiku upustio tek pre manje od 10 godina. Izabran je na listi komunističke partije Grčke, iako on kaže da nije komunista. Spontan je, neformalan i oren za razgovor.
As far as the problems that existed in Thessaloniki at the time when you first became mayor, do you think you were successful in addressing those problems?
Look, there were really many problems. The first one was the financial problem, the economic problem, and one of the biggest problems, probably biggest, which was my initial idea, that in a city like Saloniki, not only in a city like Saloniki, all over, you cannot build your future unless you know your past. This is what it's one of my principles. What's the past of Saloniki? It was Macedonian, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, Jewish, everything. It was always at the top. It was always a city. It was never a small village, always a center of the Balkans, center of the second city after Istanbul. So I said, what do we do here now? We must bring up our past.
Da bi počeli da otključavamo tajne istorije Soluna, duge preko 2 milenijuma, odlazimo kod našeg neformalnog vodiča kroz Solun, čoveka koji nam je i omogućio sastanak sa gradonačelnikom, direktora centra Sveta Gora u Solunu, institucije za koje je takođe zaslužan gradonačelnik Butaris. Naš prijatelj se zove Anastasios Duros.
And Thessaloniki was the second largest city at the Byzantine period. Thessaloniki is also a great city with a great history. You can visit in so many monuments here of Thessaloniki, some churches, Byzantine churches, Paleo-Christian churches we have. It's a great city with a great history. But I think that this unique of Thessaloniki, it's because it was so close with Constantinople, and of course, this is something very important. It was, as I told you, the gate of Mount Athos. Even for the monks of Mount Athos, they believe that their own town, their own city, it's Thessaloniki, not any other city in Greece. Not Athens, our capital, but they believe that their city, outside of Mount Athos, it's Thessaloniki, because it was a gate and it was the nearest city to Mount Athos, and they use Thessaloniki for any kind of jobs that they have to do. 2,300 years, Thessaloniki, it was, let's say that it was a multicultural city, with, of course, the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, a lot of centuries. All this kind of people lived together, and they lived very well. And right now that we are making our metro, and the archaeologists found the central of Thessaloniki. They found the first Egnatia Street, the Via Egnatia, the Roman street. And the archaeologists found that the center of Thessaloniki remains the center of the city since 2,000 years. This is something very unique.
Ko bolje nego jedan od najvećih majstora Hollywooda da nam u nekoliko rečenica započne priču o kompleksnoj istoriji kohabitacije i konflikta Grka i Turaka na ovim prostorima.
My name is Elia Kazan. I am a Greek by blood, a Turk by birth, and an American because my uncle made a journey. This story was told me over the years by the old people in my family. They remember Anatolia, the great central plateau of Turkey and Asia. And they remember the mountain areas standing above the plain. Anatolia was the ancient home of Greek and Armenian people. But 500 odd years ago, the land was overrun by the Turk. And from that day, the Greeks and the Armenians lived here, but as minorities. The Greek subject people. The Armenian subject people. They wore the same clothes as the Turk, the fez and the sandal, ate the same food, suffered the heat together, used the donkey for burdens. And they looked up to the same mountain, but with different feelings. For in fact, they were conqueror and conquered.
Solun prelazi iz turskih u grčke ruke tek 1912. godine. Balkanski ratovi su doneli Grcima ispunjenje sna o nacionalnom ujedinjenju i oslobođenju, a Turcima početak nacionalnog košmara koji je trajao čitavih 10 godina. Nepromišljenom politikom grčke vlade i kralja, taj turski košmar je ubrzo postao i grčki košmar. Novi turski lider, Kemal Ataturk, zaustavio je grčku ofanzivu kod Ankare, organizovao kontranapad i kompletno potisnuo Grke iz Male Azije u kojoj su oni živjeli još od antičkih vremena. Jedna od najtragičnijih epizoda koja će imati velike reperkusije na Solun je požar, pa onda pokolj i proterivanje Grka u i oko Smirne, na obali Egejskog mora. Više od 100.000 izbeglica dolazi te 1922. godine u Solun i naseljava se u gradu koji je do tada imao jevrejsku većinu. Bez obzira na svoje zasluge u stvaranju moderne turske države, Kemal Paša Ataturk, čovek rođen u Solunu, je do dan danas jedno od najomraženijih imena među grčkim nacionalistima.
So we brought up the fact that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, he was born in Saloniki. In 2010, Mickey, we had 5,000 Turks visiting Saloniki. Last year, we had 126,000 Turks visiting the house of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Now, the tourism thing grew up. It's not a vacation tourism. It's a tourism all over the year, which is very important. Then we had a Jewish past, which was for 500 years, Saloniki was called the Jerusalem of the Balkans. So it was easy. And we said, we're going to bring up the Holocaust Museum.
The first written source in regard to the Jews in Salonika is the coming of Apostol Paul in the half of the 1st century. Here Paul met an organized Jewish community which was strong enough to expel him from the city. Paul spoke to the synagogue for 3 Sabbats. That means that at first the Jews of the city were curious enough to hear something new, but as far as we understand the text, the biblical text. I mean, when the Jews understood that Paul had an influence in regard to a new religion, when they understood that it was a matter of something new in the context of the Jewish religion, but it was a new religion, they managed to expel him from Salonika.
Tokom vekova u Solunu je uvek bilo Jevreja, ali sve se suštinski promenilo 1492. godine, kada je 20.000 Jevreja stiglo iz Španije.
This was something that changed the history of Salonika, because according to the survey of 1478, the population of Salonika was just 10,000.
For 5 straight centuries, in the 15th and 20th century, Thessaloniki was the only major city in Europe that had the majority of Jewish population.
Yeah.
That's a little known fact.
The usual example is that on Saturdays, starting from Friday noon, the city was dead. In 1913, let me explain, 1913, the number of the Jews in Salonika were about 75,000. We must take this number for sure because it is referred in a report of the rabbi, which was an internal paper. There was no need to overstate the situation.
Can you tell us a little bit about the effect of the Great Fire of 1917?
Well, this is a great chapter. What is important is not the fire itself, because Thessaloniki has been burned 5 or 6 times with fires like this. What was important was the law, were the laws which were issued in order to rebuild the city. The main point is that all the owners were deprived of their plots, their land. They were given a paper, a bond, reflecting the value of their land, and the land was redivided in new plots, and these plots were put in auctions. But the new plots were about 3 times bigger than the old plots. And the old plots were shared by 2, 3, or 5 families. So, in order to buy a new plot, 20 families had to join their forces. And there is another point, that these auctions delayed about 4, 5, or 6 years, according to the part of the city. So think of a small merchant who had a shop and a house. For 6 years, he had the paper, just the paper, nothing else. A great part of the original Jewish neighborhood became a new commercial center, a new business district. The establishment of the refugees happened exactly during this period of redistribution of the land we talked about.
Saloniki ist in deutscher Hand. Hier war im Weltkrieg das Hauptquartier der Alliierten. Jetzt ist dieser wichtige Hafen schon nach 4,5 Tagen von unseren Truppen erobert.
Saloniki suffered from the Holocaust, and this was 55,000 citizens, Jewish citizens of Saloniki. They were led to Auschwitz, and period. The whole Jewish community of Saloniki was totally destroyed. And we had to bring this up not only as a matter of honor to the memory of all these people who were lost. But there's a fact that Saloniki must understand and must know how important was the Jewish community of Saloniki at that time. It will never be again the same, but we have to underline it.
This is, of course, a very sad story, as you said, but it is something understudied today, because there are a lot of open questions. We have to take some things in mind. First of all, that the majority and practically all the older people spoke this form of Jewish language, Judaismo, which is Spanish of 15th century, enriched with Turkish, Jewish and Greek words and syntax forms. Anyway, this was a language for the Jews themselves. Most of them, especially the poor ones, lived in neighborhoods together, speaking this language. A large percentage didn't know to speak and write. They haven't been in school, and they were very poor. So they were very easy victims for the Germans. These people could not escape. They had to go nowhere because they had no money. They were not in a position to move even 500 meters away from their place or their neighborhood, because they had not even a small coin to buy anything. I mean, there is no way to go away from your home if you have nothing. And if you do not understand the language, you don't understand the signs. So, in this sense, the way the Salonika was rebuilt after the fire, for these people was the first step to Auschwitz. I mean, they were condemned. The Jewish people in Salonika had not the opportunities the Jews had in other Greek cities. I mean, Greek-speaking Jews who lived together with the Christians, and they were a small minority of the whole population. It was very easy for them to live among the Christians, and usually Christians helped them, especially when the local bishop was a good guy. When they were asked a list of the Jews, gave a paper with their own names. They said, "We are the Jews." So the history of Jews in the Holocaust is not a single and unique history. There are many histories, and there is something more that is very serious. It's a very serious point, and usually historians do not count on this. It is easier for me to express it in numbers. In the last Ottoman survey of 1904, there were 15,000 Greek Christian Orthodox in Thessaloniki who resided for long. Only 15,000. In the survey of 1928, the Christians were 180,000. You understand the gap between 15 and 180. The difference has to do with refugees. I mean, refugees didn't know the Jews, they had not lived with the Jews, they had classes with the Jews. So, although there are many cases that Christians of Salonika helped Jews to survive, especially those who were organized in resistance, the great majority had no interest about the Jews. What I remember from my childhood were stories for what a pity, Jews were good people, they have taken them away, and something like this. They were words of sympathy, but were words of sympathy from people who had came from other places, had other problems. The Germans had a good reason to take all the money, all the value, all the property from the Jews. In July 42, put about 9,000 Jews in slave work. And as these people were not fit to work manually, a very high mortality rate happened. And then there was a contract between the Germans and the Jewish community, and the Jewish community paid a very large sum of money until December 42 in order to release its members from the slave work. It was a huge sum of money. I will show you the check. And this obligation of the Jews was in practice terminated in January 43, when the community came absolutely out of money and all the rich Jews were out of money. The anti-Jewish measures were taken in early February, so just after absorbing all the money from the Jewish community.
How many managed to escape?
Well, what we know for sure, because all the others are estimations, what we know for sure is the number of the Jews who returned Salonika during 1945. There were only 800 from Auschwitz and 1,100 who were in hide, or in resistance in Athens, or either in resistance in Athens. In general, about 90% of the Jews of Salonika were killed.
That's an incredible number. Final act, destruction of the cemetery, 2,000-year-old almost Jewish cemetery. The tombs, I mean, it was so vengeful and horrible and unnecessary.
Well, actually, it was a series of economic activities. Each Jewish grave consisted of 64 bricks and a marble tombstone. During 1942 and 43, there was no gasoline in Salonika, and the industries that produced bricks didn't work at all. So bricks were very valuable. And actually, the payment, the payment of an unskilled worker bought just 2 bricks. A brick was a very expensive thing. So a grave was a treasure, and there were 300,000 graves. These graves were not demolished, they were dismantled. All the bricks were taken, they were put in heaps, and the Greek Quisling governor of Salonika gave these bricks, not on sale, but they gave the bricks to various institutions. For example, the city of Thessaloniki took 100,000 bricks to erect a building and so on. An elementary school which still exists, and it was near the cemetery, took 20 marble stones to change the water closet of the school. So all these items were used. The bricks, which were more valuable than marble and easily to take them away, were finished until September 43. The marbles were still used until 1947, that is, after the German left and Greece was a free country. And the most serious, the land was officially given to the university by a free Greek government in 1946, with a decree that carried the signatures of all the members of the government. So it's not the Germans only. The matter of cemetery, it's a matter Greeks versus Greeks, that is Jews, Greek Jews.
Saloniki had another huge problem. Saloniki was, after the war, it was a conservative city, very conservative city, nationalistic, conservative, and it's explicable. It's not time to say now why it's explicable, but the thing is it's explicable, and it was a closed city. So one of the goals of our administration was how we can open up the city. I mean, and I'll tell you one small example of what means conservative. When you go to the church, and the bishop, after the liturgy, he sings the national hymn. This is conservatism, nationalism and conservatism. This is what I say. We couldn't fight it, but we had a fight with the bishop before the election. And when I took over, I went to him and I said, look, we cannot fight anymore. You are the religious leader of the city, I am the political leader of the city. We have to give the example of how two different heads can speak to each other for the benefit of the city. And that's how it happened. This is why I like him now, because he was very, very sincere and honest about these things. Even now, he called me for a coffee and things, and he says to me, come more often to the church. Elections are coming. Can you believe that? Yeah.
As you know, right now with these financial problems here in Greece in general, we try to live in a city with not so many problems, because I think the life of the city is very well. It's very well. We have very good. Let's say we have the universities. It's the universities are the main. More than 150,000 students stay in Thessaloniki every year. Okay.
Tell me a little bit. I read that you're concerned about nationalism. Do you think it's on the rise? And can you give me a little snapshot of what's going on right now, right here?
Well, nationalism is on the rise all over Europe. This is a bad thing, definitely. Now the Balkans, when we were under the Ottoman Empire, everybody lived well together. We didn't fight each other. In Saloniki, there were 50,000 Jews, 30,000, 40,000 Turks, 20,000, 30,000 Greeks, Armenians, Slavs, all over. Italians, and everybody lived well together. Saloniki used to have, before the fall of the Ottoman Empire, used to have 12 newspapers in 5 different languages. What does it mean? We all live well together. There were no incidents of bad incidents. Sometimes there were, but that's life. There was no animosity. Now, animosity is coming up.
Blagoslovene si, Gospodi, nauči mja opravdanjem.
Να είστε καλά. Ο αγώνας θα συνεχιστεί μέχρι την δικαίωση.
Η Μακεδονία ήταν, είναι, θα είναι ελληνική. Να το πάρουν χαμπάρι προδότες οι πολιτικοί.
Η Μακεδονία είναι ελληνική και δεν τη διαπραγματευόμαστε. Ποτέ. Δεν πρόκειται ποτέ να διαπραγματευτούμε για τη Μακεδονία, για τη χώρα μας, για τα ιερά της χώματα. Κάποιοι πολέμησαν για αυτή την ελευθερία, την οποία εμείς απολαμβάνουμε αυτή τη στιγμή.
Macedonia is the only place that unites the Greeks for millennia, and we will never accept another country next to Greece to be called Macedonia.
So I think that when you negotiate a problem with somebody, you got to stand on his feet, not on your feet. You must have definitely a kind of red line, what you can accept, what you cannot accept. But you must understand that he has also a red line. And the only way to solve the problem is to see again, are these red lines are real or are a fantasy? So I think that I'm not very knowledgeable about the problems the Serbians face after the war and after the tearing apart Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia. About Kosovo, about Montenegro, about Bosnia-Herzegovina. I'm not very knowledgeable about all these things. What I know is the problem we have with the former Yugoslavia, Republic of Macedonia. I'll tell you one thing, what made me change my red lines. Prime Minister Zaev, he was invited by me for New Year's Eve here in Saloniki. And he said to me, look, I understand your sentimental problem about the problem of the name of the country. But you must understand also that we grew up for the last more than 100 years as Macedonians. How can I change that? So this changed what I call my red line. I said, we can find a name. So I said that the best thing could be, for my idea, Upper Macedonia or North Macedonia, a geographical definition. But it means that it's one country which is separated in two. What about New Macedonia? New Macedonia is a new country, like New Zealand, like New Guinea. It's a new country because your problem is that you want to find an identity. The Bulgarians say that you are Bulgarians. We say that you are not Macedonians. Who cares? What do you feel? You are New Macedonians. That's what I feel. And this is how I kind of change my way of facing the problem. I think that if they find an agreement on whatever name, and they agree also that they'll make a roadmap for the next 5-10 years to change little by little, to change, not change the history, but change the way they present history. If you get rid of all these ancient ridicule things that you have Alexander the Great as, this is ridiculous because Alexander the Great lived 300 years before Christ. The Slavs came down the area 600 years after Christ. But this is 1,000 years. How come it? Anyway, so what I say is that we must do whatever we can so that we can see what's the problem of the other guy opposite. The European Union is undergoing on a crisis that started 5-10 years ago, and it's not only a financial crisis, it's a social crisis. But I think that there is no other solution, even for Greece, even for Serbia. There is no other solution but yet be part of a bigger, let's say, a bigger federation. Federation which would have its you cannot compare the way of life, the way of thinking with the Northern Europeans. The Southern Europeans have a different way of thinking, the Northern Europeans have a different way of thinking. Think about the weather. Only think about the weather. The weather affects the feeling of the people. So I think there is no solution but be inside the European Union and try inside the European Union to gain as many more profits as you can. It's not easy, not easy at all. Because you see the big countries like Germany, like France, Poland, you see what happened with England, they are crazy. I mean, and I think it's much better that they left. But anyway, I think that the more smaller countries are in the European Union, the quicker the problems will be solved. Yeah.
What would be, in your mind, the ideal outcome of your tenure? 100 years from now, what would you like to be remembered for?
That I was a good mayor. What does a good mayor mean? That all the defaults of the previous years, I tried to make them work better. You cannot change the city in 1 or 2 terms. No way. But you can give an idea to the people how things can be better. You must not be afraid of a new idea. If you have a new idea, you must pass it on. If it is okay, it will stay. If it's not okay, it will not stay by itself.